Hello and welcome to Trad Jazz Today. Dan Zeilinger has been a world-traveling trad jazz musician for the past 40 years. Some of his most memorable performances were on the lawn of the Edinburgh Castle, at the Imperial Palace in Japan, as well as TV shows and commercials around the world. Dan has met many people during his career and has spent many hours on and off stage with these musicians, talking about jazz, life, and more. Some are touring musicians, some are theme park warriors, and some are casual musicians who play on weekends with their friends. They all have stories worthy of a movie script, and through these interviews, Dan will be sharing them with you. Now, Dan Zeilinger.
Hi, this is Dan Zeilinger with Trad Jazz Today. My next guest is somebody that many of you have asked about, kind of the disembodied voice behind me during a lot of my interviews, and the theoretically producer of the show, although he likes to call himself just the scheduler. But here he is. It's my son, Mr. Aaron Zeilinger. Hi, Aaron. How are you?
Doing well.
That's good. I'm checking out the glare off your glass. Everything is okay. So let's start this like I start all my interviews.
Okay.
Where were you born?
In Orange, California at St. Joseph's Hospital.
Where are you now? So that makes you and Matt Johnson both native Orange Californians.
That does indeed.
I think
Not sure if that resemblance is a good thing or not.
Well, there's actually quite a bit of resemblance as far as personality profile.
Yes.
No, I would say. Okay. When was the first time you realized music was something that you were interested in?
Well, as I tell a lot of people, my earliest memories, other than family gatherings, were at your festivals. So I know when I was born that you were a salsa player, but my earliest memories weren't of those times. My earliest memories were at a festival, at whether it be a local Dixie festival or a performance, or when you were with the Sandblasters at San Diego. So I knew early on that I wanted to be involved with music. I just didn't know what that meant until I got to elementary school band.
So you have no childhood memories of me as a trumpet player?
I do not. I don't have any firm memories of you as a trumpet player. My earliest memories that I can remember are you of a tuba player, but you would still play trumpet at the house.
Well, I apologize for that. So, but when did it hit? When did you say? Because actually, I know. I know that you weren't intending on becoming a musician early in your life. So tell me a little bit about that progression. I guess when you first got into band, that didn't even do it. But how old were you when you first started playing it, and why trumpet?
Gosh, elementary school band was available when you started in 4th grade, but you didn't get to be in the big band until 5th grade. I started trumpet because you always told me you played trumpet and tuba looked too big. So I played trumpet. We had one in the house. I was good to go. So that's the main reason I started trumpet. And then how I progressed through whether or not I wanted to be a musician or not, I guess you could say I got turned off to becoming a musician full time earlier on out of sheer laziness and inferiority complex. There's 2 other trumpet players in my elementary school band that had been taking trumpet lessons for a long time. Of course, I realized later that wasn't a great thing for them because they stopped playing. But they were Grant was just so much better than me, and I always thought, well, I'm not going to be better than Grant. So
how old were you when you first met Grant?
He was in band in 5th grade.
Oh, I didn't realize it was that early. You were talking about the same Grant who was at high school with you, right?
Grant Spencer.
Okay.
So I played with him all the way up until high school, and they stopped playing trumpet in high school, and I kept going. But it was high school when I realized I wanted to teach, mainly because I was so impacted by Randy Rivera and Mr. Anthony, and of course you were working at the school as well, that I started to go, maybe that's something I want to do. I want to, my earliest thoughts were I want to be a band director and teach a marching band, but with no concept of what that meant.
If I remember right, weren't you originally looking at maybe becoming a history teacher or an English teacher?
History or English. When I got out of high school, my first gig was at the same high school I graduated with, as you know. And when I got to Kennedy and started to sort of see the curtains peeled back and see how much work went into being a band director that was not just band directing, I sort of at that point realized, well, maybe I don't want to be a band director because I didn't realize how little Mr. Anthony was in front of the band. You know, I had no concept of having to book buses and run booster meetings and get instruments repaired and select repertoire and study my scores and have parent comp. All the extra stuff that comes with teaching made me go, well, I like teaching marching band, but I don't like it that much. So,
to back up a little bit to elementary school, when you were in Sid Vile's class, weren't you the only trumpet player?
Well, in fourth grade, in the you're just learning to play instruments. Yeah, I don't remember how many other trumpet players there were at that point. But when I got to fifth grade, I was not the only trumpet player. Grant was there.
When you got into junior high with first Wayne Nelson and then Karen Zalazzo, how many trumpets did you have in that band? Or how big was the band?
I honestly don't remember all of them. I know there was a lot of them because I only remember the people that sat next to me, which was Grant and Tom. So, but I want to say there was 7 to 10.
Okay, and then you get into high school, and how many trumpets did you have at Kennedy?
Too many. What was there, like 20, 21?
Yeah, something like that.
It was a big section. Yeah.
How big was the band then?
My first year there, we were just breaking 200. By the time I was leaving, we were at like 320, 330. It was a giant program. And a lot of that has to do with, you know, Wayne Nelson and Karen Zalazzo's building of Walker was a pretty consistent stream of musicians that came into there.
If I remember right, you weren't necessarily their favorite.
Nope. Well, I didn't say anything to Wayne Nelson. I was too scared as a 7th grader, but when 8th grade rolled around and Miss Zalazzo came in, I reveled in being a class clown. I was a terror in her class. I talked constantly and always had a joke and never shut up. And I have a lot of memories of being told, Aaron, stop it right now. So yeah, I wasn't the best for her first year of teaching. But that all got knocked out of me when I got to a giant high school with, you know, intense marching band and all that stuff.
So let's take it to your marching band and jazz band. And well, your first jazz band was under Zalazzo once, wasn't it?
My first jazz band was technically my first jazz band would have been the Mammoth Lakes camp, right? No. I hit that in high school. So yeah, my first jazz band was under Zalazzo in 8th grade. And I honestly can't remember what we played.
I remember Kevin Shaw was on drums.
Yes.
At the time. And I remember just because it was a very weird feeling for me to be in the audience watching you on stage. And maybe you can understand that better now, but at the time it's very, very odd. It felt very much like a fish out of water for me. And I also remember that in 7th, I guess that was 8th grade for Kevin. Was Kevin the same age as you or younger?
He's older than me.
Oh, well, you guys were in the same jazz band together, though.
We were in high school. I don't remember him playing drums in junior high.
I just remember because he had his swing pattern turned around.
Yeah, I could have swore Kevin was 1 year older than me.
Well, I think you guys were the same age. I went up to, of course, I worked with Karen and her husband professionally. She was your teacher. And I went up to her, I said, you realize that his swing pattern is backwards? Talking about Kevin Shaw. And she said, I know, but it's the only way he can do it. So I just leave it alone. So
junior high answer right there.
That's your junior high answer. All right, let's talk now in the high school years. Your first high school field show, do you remember?
The show itself, it was Porgy and Bess.
Yeah, good show.
Yep. With oh gosh, what was his first name? It was the older Wolf. Eddie Wolf was the trumpet soloist for that. Yeah. And that was sort of the last of the Kennedy just kind of does fun shows theme, because Porgy and Bess was a pretty straightforward marching band doing a
Out of the,
Broadway
out
feel.
of the box, yeah.
Yeah.
And
But yeah, very much remember it. Very much remember being overwhelmed, and that there was a lot of people, and the seniors seemed like giants that I could never attain any sort of anything with.
you felt that way for a very long time.
Yeah. But yeah, very much remember that. Very much remember the parade band that I really wanted to be a part of, because that was a much more coveted spot, because Mr. A auditioned the parade band, but I didn't make it until halfway through my freshman year. So I think I wasn't a part of the first two parades, but then I got put in a slot because someone got in trouble, if I remember right.
Yeah. And tell our audience what you were given to play as an instrument in your first parade band experience. You remember what it was?
When I was given to play, as in from you?
Yes.
That was when I was playing the cornet, right?
The Convictor.
Yeah.
It had no third valve slide on it.
Yes.
Or no trigger.
And add a bell tuner on it. Yeah, that was a trip, because I played that for 2 years, and then we got the Yamaha. No, I played that for 1 year, and then I played your giant trumpet sophomore year, and then you traded that for the Yamaha.
Yeah,
I don't remember what the trumpet was though.
Oh, it was a canceled Besson, French Besson. It was a Miha. So it was big, huge 470 bore.
Yeah.
And you fell into that horn basically.
Yep. Yeah.
And then I traded Matt Franke for his Yamaha.
Yep. And I still play that Yamaha.
It's a good horn.
Yep.
Okay, so what else did you play in high school other than, well, marching band, obviously, concert band, and you finally were in the jazz band there?
Yep. I started jazz band right away freshman year, because they had the jazz. Mr. A was not, I would never call him a jazz teacher. So the jazz band was much more of a laid back, let's play some tunes. It wasn't a hardcore auditioned group. So I remember I joined jazz band right away because it was another ensemble I could be in. And freshman year, I was just in concert band. I wasn't good enough for the wind ensemble yet. So I jumped into that jazz band. I think it was fourth trumpet, fifth trumpet, something like that, playing things like.
Do you remember any names of any of the arrangements you were doing then?
I don't remember freshman year. The only chart I remember doing several years was Birdland. And Brass Machine. Was that the other one?
I don't know. I didn't work with the jazz band.
I want to say there was another one that we played repeatedly, but I remember Birdland, and I remember another like 1970s brass chart. I want to say it was Brass Machine. But other than that, it was all I just played. I didn't know what I was doing.
Well, if I remember right, your senior year, well, no, we need to go back. When did you get your braces?
End of 8th grade year. So I had my braces until the beginning of sophomore year. So I had about 2.5 years. And yeah, that sucked. There's nothing like metal under your lips and being stubborn and refusing to put on any sort of protection on that metal and cutting my lips open. That was a real smart time for me.
And you wouldn't wear your retainer, if I remember right.
No, I wore my retainer. I lost it at an El Torito the year after high school, and my dentist had retired. And when I went to a new when I went to a new orthodontist, they took scans of my teeth and said, you would have to wear this retainer the rest of your life. And at that point I said, nope. And I stopped wearing a retainer.
If I remember right, your senior year, you were playing F's above high C at the end of the show.
Yep. By senior year, I had some chops on me, but senior year, I only had music classes. I was in, I tell the kids in my high school all the time that because I took 0 period, I was so overloaded on credits by the time I hit senior year that I only had to take 2 mandatory classes. I took econ/gov in English, and then the rest of my 6 periods I was in the band room. With marching band, concert band, wind ensemble, jazz band. I helped with the drumline. I helped with the color guard, and I hung out after school.
I don't know if I realized that at the time, because that was basically the same thing I did.
Yeah, I was there all day. Mr. A used to tell me to lock up. I'm going to go home, Aaron, just make sure it's closed up. It's like, okay, Mr. A. And he left me and some other hooligan 18-year-olds in a band room. Looking back now, that was an awful decision. But luckily, I'm a paranoid person, so nothing happened.
Now, during the same frame of time, you actually tried to put together a jazz band at the
That
house.
was at the end of 8th grade. I tried to put together a jazz band that I also wanted to become a ska band. If you remember it, it lasted one summer. Because we just didn't have the desire to keep it going. But yeah, we tried to put together a group, and it was sloppy.
Do you remember the personnel?
I remember Kim Feisman was in it.
Yeah.
I don't remember who else.
Wasn't Colin playing trombone?
No, Colin was always a trumpet player, but I didn't talk to Colin until I got to
I think maybe it's Derek.
Derek would have been it. Yeah, Derek Cunningham.
And Mindy Wolf on piano.
No, Mindy was a trumpet player, and she was also a year younger than me. So 8th grade, I wouldn't have known her. But it was, the usual suspects at that time would have been like Derek Cunningham and Kim and probably Nathan Thompson and
Was Ryan around then? He was also playing trumpet though, right?
Yeah, Ryan was around, but he wasn't serious about trumpet playing. He just played trumpet because he wanted to be around the band. But no, me and Ryan were close until about junior year.
Right. So we're at the end of your senior year, and where do you first attempt college? Where does this happen?
So senior year, that summer, I was attending Cerritos College because Impulse Drum and Bugle Corps was paired with them. So technically my first college was Cerritos, and then in the fall I started at Golden West Community College. So similar to several of the interviewees you've done, I went through 2 years of Golden West.
Yes.
I sat in the Tom Kubis improv band and got my face slapped. So
I don't know if that's an appropriate term necessarily.
Well, I mean,
Tom is such a good teacher.
I sat down in the improv class, and I was the best trumpet at my high school. So in my head, I was like, okay, I'm gonna be all right. I've been around Dad. I went to the Mammoth Lakes Jazz Camp. I could do this. And I sat down, and the class was only for improv. So it wasn't like a big band where we were learning charts. It was like Tom Kubis arrangements that everyone took a solo on. But I distinctly remember the first day I sat down, I met the other two trumpet players, and they're like, okay, Tom goes, pull up the first chart in your folder. And it was some skunk funk. And I looked at the page and went, what am I doing here? And they went 1, 2, and I went so fast. Yeah. I couldn't even keep up in any way, shape, or form. I think my eyes flew out of my head.
Let's back up to your Mammoth experience. I forgot. Well, almost skipped completely over that.
Sophomore year of high school. Yeah.
Let's talk about that a little bit.
Well, you were teaching at Mammoth at that time. So I wanted to go up and take a whack at Dixie, and got up to the Mammoth Lakes Jazz Camp. And you guys always broke us up into bands. So my band was taught by Fast Eddie. Eddie Erickson.
Eddie Erickson, yeah.
Yeah, and we came up. I still remember the name of our band was the I Can't Believe It's Better Than Butter Jazz Band. And we learned, I think, 3 tunes, but the other one I still remember is After You've Gone, because that one I took a solo on, so I practiced it obsessively. And I don't know, that was just a blast of a time.
Oh, and you had a trumpet coach up there too.
Yeah, but most of my memories were in Eddie's band, because I grab onto those little stories, right? And Eddie, gosh, he was just a blast to be around. But actually, my favorite part of the Mammoth Lakes Jazz Camp was the jam sessions.
Before lights out?
Yeah, like all the coaches would leave us alone, and there was a drum kit and 2 amps in the middle of that like rooming area we were in, and we'd just sit down and call out charts, and it would just keep going, and people would rotate in and out. Like
it would always end with Chameleon.
Yeah, always. And it would go on forever. We would play Chameleon for freaking 45 minutes while everyone's just jamming out. It was silly, but it was a lot of fun.
And you met some people up there too. You made some pretty good friendships for a while.
Yeah, for my beginning high school years, but most of them they weren't from Southern California.
Now, were you at Mammoth for 2 years or just one?
Just one. I was just there for 1 year. Because the following year is when I did West Coast Sound Drum Corps.
And now it's still up in Mammoth, I think.
Yes, because you just wrote for West Coast Sound. You weren't on staff with them.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Crazy, crazy, crazy. Okay, so we have you at Golden West now. What classes did you take other than improv?
I took Music Theory 1. Can't remember the name of the gentleman that taught it, but I remember not learning a lot because he basically read out of a book. And I took I think I took a world history course on specifically I think it was like 1300 to 1600 Euro Asia or something like that. It was something very specific. I took a creative writing class, just I puddled around in a community college.
And you did that for 2 years?
Did that for 2 years, and then I convinced myself that I wanted to instead become a manager at Starbucks, much to the dismay of my mother.
And did you?
Yeah, I got up into management. I can definitely say, and I tell this to my students all the time, that as much as you don't realize how much working in food service will help, it has definitely helped me in my ability to deal with parents and management. But yeah, I worked at Starbucks for 5.5 years, stopped going to college, and taught marching band while I was doing it, still convincing myself I didn't want to teach.
Well, let's stop everything right here.
Sure.
I forgot to say some things that are pretty important for those of people out there who don't know us personally. And that one of those things is the fact is my son went on to get his music degree eventually, and is now the band director at Orange Lutheran High School. He was the assistant director, marching coach at Warren High School for 12 years.
10 years.
10 years. And this year, actually, Yamaha chose him as one of the 40 band directors under 40 years old to nationally to be honored with I don't even know what the award's called, but they had a recognition program for us.
That's what it's called. It's called Yamaha's 40 under 40.
For outstanding educators under the age of 40, and he crept right in before the deadline.
I didn't creep in. I wasn't even a part of the application process. I found it out on accident by one of my students. So
anyway, we are talking to another educator here with some creds. In fact, much more than I ever had. Okay, now we can continue.
Sure.
So where do we left off at, or you haven't quite got to APU yet?
No, I haven't quite got to APU, but like I said,
I Starbucks right now.
Yeah, I was at Starbucks, and for a good 5 years, I stopped playing trumpet altogether. After I got out of drum corps, I just focused on teaching marching and the occasional brass sectional at various high schools until I had landed at Warren in about 2004, and I was there for 10 years.
As looking back now as an educator, would you say that your drum corps experience was positive for you?
Very much so. Especially because at the time I was doing drum corps, I still wanted to be a teacher. And the main thing that I got from drum corps was when I realized I wanted to teach, I started obsessing about the teachers that impacted me. So I would just, while I was in a rehearsal, I would notate the things that made something click in my head. So Spam would say something random and off the cuff. Joe Miller would say something off the cuff. For those of you who don't know, this is and it would make sense to me, and then I would log that away of oh, that's how I can teach that marching concept. Or we'd be in the brass hark and you would say something and I'd go, oh, that's how I teach that concept. And I started logging away all these little, I built my teaching toolbox basically in drum corps because that was it was time intensive. In high school I kind of had an idea what I wanted to do, but I wasn't smart enough at that time to go oh, I should probably pay attention to how this is being taught. But after that point, yeah, drum corps really, really helped me figure out what worked for me, which allowed me to figure out what works for other people. So yeah.
One of the hard concepts for a lot of my educator friends is just the fact that everybody doesn't learn the same way. It took me a very long time to learn that myself, that some people are visual learners and some people are conceptual learners, and there are many different styles of learning. And and I think you're probably saying kind of the same thing with your experience with drum corps, is that you noticed the different ways people would attack the same problem.
Yeah, not only different ways people would attack the same problem, but I was right after I got out of high school, like I said, started at Kennedy, but I didn't know what I was doing. I was parroting what was being done towards me. So like Randy would say something and I would just say my version of that thing with no thought process of why I needed to say that thing. Oh, you should stand up and this is what you should do. Okay, I'm going to just repeat that phrase and hopefully it'll work. But what I found, especially in my first couple years of being a marching tech, is that I would say those things and then it wouldn't work for some kids. They still wouldn't stand up straighter or do a technique a certain way. And so that's what started, blessedly, your ADD passed on to me. So I would start going, well, if that doesn't work, then something else has to work. And I'd start just coming up with other analogies and other things and oh, maybe if I have them do this thing, that will make them transfer that skill to this skill. And it was through that of like, well, if it's not going to work, I'm not going to keep doing one thing. I'm going to figure out 18 different ways to say the same thing, because hopefully in those 18 ways, I'll have reached everyone that I'm teaching.
Yep. I'm proud to say that one of the things that concepts you've caught on to, more so than a lot of your peers, and by peers, I just mean people who've gone through the education system to become educators, is the fact that presentation is a large part of whether or not your students learn. Just presenting material isn't the key,
Yep.
And you have to do something wacky or at least something that gets their attention and wants them to lock in the information. And it's hard to see when your old man is in front of you being crazy and saying, why are you doing that? And then one day it goes, click. Oh, at least I noticed he was doing that, So,
and I that's what I started to reflect on. I know we haven't got there, but when I started getting into college and even when I was at Warren, and I started to get to do some of the gig as the teacher was letting me do that, I realized that my zaniness, the things that I would just do because that's how I am, like I'm crazy and wild and loud, the kids would then tell me afterwards that they remembered that thing because of the dumb thing I said. And all I thought was, why did you remember the dumb thing? But then I realized, well, what I've done is I've created a marker. I was running around the field clucking like a chicken, but they then remember the concept that I was just talked about because they remembered the silliness of the thing I just did. And that's when it really clicked for me that what you did and what some of the other teachers that I wanted to, mimic, that was sort of their key, was the getting the kids to remember the crazy thing because that makes them pay attention to the serious thing that's supposed to happen. And if I had just said the concept and kept saying it, that's not going to stick as much as a funny memory will.
Right. Cool. So now, do we go from Starbucks to APU, or is there something between those two?
Education wise, yeah. I mean, I did a brief stint with an online college and realized I suck at online school. But no, I went from APU and then no, I was at Warren, and the band director at that time finally asked me after 5 years of working with him why I'm not a teacher, because I really liked teaching. And I didn't have a good answer for him. I just said, I don't know, because at that point I didn't know. I'd been at Starbucks for 5 years. I wasn't really happy with what I was doing, but I was thrilled to come teach every day. He's like, well, you should come work for me for a year. And if you still want to be a teacher after that point, then we'll figure out how to get you to college. And so I did. And that was an invaluable year of messing up with the protection of a master teacher at that time. And that's, during that year, I was trying to figure out where to go back to school because I had all these community college credits, but I had no idea where I wanted to go. And I was talking to you about it and start asking around to your friends. And we had found out about APU because of a tuba student of yours.
It was actually kind of serendipitous because I had a tuba student from one of my days at Canyon High School who wanted to go into college and asked me where the best place to go was. And so I called up my buddy, John Van Houten, and because I hadn't been there for a while, been in the educational circles for tuba players. he said, "Oh, you need to go to one of the 3 schools I'm at." And I said, "Well, okay, where are you?" And he said, "Well, I think he was at USC, APU, and maybe Citrus."
No, it's Chapman.
Chapman, okay. No, he wasn't at Chapman. Fred Green was at Chapman.
Oh, I thought he was the one that said Chapman, or was it your student that was just looking at Chapman?
Yeah, I was talking, yeah, it was that's where my student ended up going, to which John was upset about. But while I was on the phone with Gray, what was his name? I called up the director.
Donovan Gray?
I called up Donovan Gray and wanted to find out if there was a need for a tuba player. And while I was on the phone, your mother was behind me saying, "Ask about Aaron, ask about Aaron." And I went, okay. I said, "Well, okay, you have any need for, And so he said, "Sure, bring him on in." And then just by serendipitous, I found out that my boss at Canyon's wife was in charge of scholarships at APU. And then I just said, "Well, let's go for it." And then the rest is up to you. So let's talk about how that went. And it
was crazy.
Well, actually going there.
I don't remember all that backstory. I just remember you saying we were going to go check out a wind ensemble concert.
Right.
So we had went out to the wind ensemble, and that's when I really were like, this is where I want to go. We had gone there, and their final piece was the bombing of Dresden, Wind Symphony number 2 or something like that. But it was a thematic, highly thematic piece, and I was absolutely blown away by it. Went up to Dr. Gray, said, "How do I audition?" He said, "Come in," just like he told you. I said, "Okay." And at that time we were doing brass works, so I asked Angel Carmona what trumpet pieces are normally good for auditions at this time, because you hadn't been in the education system for a while. Right. I wasn't taking private lessons. So he's like, "Oh, you should play the Hindemith Sonata. That you'd be good on that." Great, thanks. So he hands me the Hindemith Trumpet Sonata, and it's a beast of a piece. So I'm preparing it. It's like a 6-minute long solo with the accompanying piano. I spend about a month and a half practicing every day to get it down, and I get into the audition with Dr. Gray, and he goes, "What are you going to play for me?" And I said, "Oh, I'm going to play the Hindemith Trumpet Sonata." He said, Okay, go ahead." And so I start, and I'm about 5-6 measures in, and he goes, "All right, that's enough." And I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Oh, skip ahead, play something later." Okay. So I skipped ahead in the solo, and I played another 4 or 5 bars, and he went, "Yeah, that's enough. That's enough. Here, sight read this." And he puts a hymnal on my stand. And he goes, sight read the soprano line." I was okay. So I played the soprano line of a hymnal, and he said, "Okay, great. Play me an E major scale." Okay, I play him an E major scale, and he goes, "All right, go ahead and have a seat. So let's talk about scholarships." And I was like, "Dr. Gray, I'm sorry, am I?" And he goes, "Aaron," and he had a lot of idiot, like, he had little things he did, and he takes off his glasses and goes, "Aaron, you're a fine trumpet player. I'd love to have you. All right, so about these scholarships," and that was it. I was in. And he talked to me about scholarships, and
I don't think you ever told me that story.
That was all the feedback I got from him. So I got placed into concert band. I did handbells because that was a large scholarship. I did the marching band because that was a large scholarship. I wrote a drill for the marching band because they paid me in scholarship. So the rest is history.
You did what was necessary to get it done.
Yeah.
So, and not only did, and then tell me why French horn. What happened there?
Oh man, so APU at that time had a highly competitive trumpet section. As I'm sure everyone on this channel knows, trumpet players can be a little bit egotistical, and I'm not really. I hate competing. I just want to do, like, I want to play the music in front of me. I want to do the audition. I want it not to be a problem anymore. I want to just play the music. But there was this large argument that was happening in the section. Everyone was really angry at each other. And I remember sitting in concert band, and Dr. Cope said, "We are low on French horns. Does anyone want to learn French horn?" And all I thought at that moment was, well, I'm going to become a teacher. I need to learn another instrument, so I'll learn French horn. He said, okay. And he checked out a French horn to me, and I started French horn lessons right then. Stopped trumpet lessons altogether. and played French horn for the next 3 years in college.
Did you check out, was it a decent horn? Was it like a Con 8D or something?
No, it was a Holton.
It was
I don't-
Farkas probably, wasn't it? It was probably a Farkas model.
it wasn't the Farkas model. It was a Holton. I can't exactly remember
That's all right.
the model number because I only had that for about a year until I got my own horn.
Yeah, we ought to talk about that.
Oh gosh. I mean, I have a love-hate relationship with my horn. So that was when I was still at Warren. So I took a bunch of kids to the NAMM show as like an experience, and we're walking around, and Germeinhardt, the traditionally flute manufacturer, I walk by their booth, and they've got a line of brass instruments there that say that they're on closeout. And I had no idea they were making brass instruments.
Or did
So
I?
I went up to them and I asked, "Hey, what are these brass instruments?" And they said, "Oh, well, a couple years ago we had bought the Nerschel factory, and we tried to manufacture brass instruments, but they didn't really take off. So we're going to be closing down our brass line." And they had a line of single and double French horns there, and I played the horn that I ended up buying, and I loved it, and it had everything that I thought I wanted. All the bells and whistles, an interchangeable lead pipe, a screw-on bell. They were strung rotors; they weren't mechanical. And it plays well, but I think I got it for $1,600 for a double horn. Should have been a warning sign right there. But bought the horn. It still plays fine, but there's definitely some metallurgy things that show. I mean, it takes on stains instead of removes them when I polish it. It's got sort of some funkiness to it, but like I said, it still plays, and I'm not a professional horn player, so as long as I've got something I can still do the occasional recording gig on, and I can teach private lessons with, then I'm going to keep going on it. But yeah, that was a wacky purchase.
So now you've got a kind of a foot in both worlds, right?
Yeah. So and the French horn one is interesting because I often get calls or emails by people wanting French horn players, and I have to keep telling them I'm not a French horn player. I play French horn, but I'm not a player. So I've played with like Irvine Symphony and the Del Amo Symphony, and I get calls for random brass gigs, and depending on my time, like I don't know whether or not I can commit to recording something or getting myself ready for Beethoven or Liszt or all sorts of harder stuff. I'm not
Wagner. Yes.
Yeah, I'm just not I don't have the chops for anymore. But I play my trumpet a lot more often because that's easy to demonstrate when I'm in high school. So yeah.
Yeah, and plus you've had to do some recording on your trumpet as of actually on both instruments, I guess, huh?
Well, especially during this lockdown, there's been a lot of brass projects and orchestral projects, so that I get asked quite often, or if I need to beef up a recording for my high school, I'll pick up one of my horns. But yeah, I still play both relatively routinely.
Cool. So tell me what's going on with your drum corps.
Oh, figuring it out. I brought some guy named Dan Zeilinger back to arrange for it.
He's a slacker.
We're in the process of trying to get our season together. It's going to be a fun time. I mean, your first track that you wrote for What Is Hip is going to be a blast. Just gearing up for whatever we can do in this current environment. And what that is, we're not sure yet. But it's been, getting kicked back in the hot seat for that one has been quite a lot of fun. But at the same time, stressful because I don't get to do what I love, which is teaching. I get to only do the administrative stuff. So the stuff that I didn't want to be a band director for, I'm doing that all the time.
What's going on? Are you back to full time at school yet?
This week we bring back the freshmen and sophomores. So we will be back in full gear this week. And in fact, this Friday will be my first wind ensemble rehearsal in over a year. We're outside in a tent with bell covers, with masks. I've got like a space bubble helmet I'm putting on to keep myself safe, all the stuff. So we'll see how it goes. It'll probably be a mess for the first week or so. But yeah, we're coming back full time this week.
Have you got a mic and PA to fit inside your hood?
Yeah, as of right now, I just have a microphone because the hood, I can put it right under the helmet right here and then talk. and then that plugs into my speaker. I'm working with tech right now to get a wireless headset that I can just have on under the helmet. But I've done a couple rehearsals in it now. It works. It's hard to hear people talk, but it's fine for music. It's like wearing like decibel cutting earplugs. That's kind of what it's like being inside there.
Or having a bad cold.
Yeah, or that.
Well, thanks so much for doing this. For those of you people out here who are asking for more information about Aaron, there he is.
Here I am.
Right there. And hopefully he'll continue to help do scheduling for the channel. We have over 100. We're close to 100 interviews now. I think last time I counted, we were at 90. And so that's important. Another thing, I hope you don't mind, I use our interview for this, is to tell you folks out there that as of March 1st, Trad Jazz Today will be an integral part of Syncopated Times and their online radio podcast. They've asked me for permission to use the interviews I have already for being part of that. So we are going to be having worldwide distribution for the podcast. And they told me that they have over 900 new viewers every day. So that should be a good thing for us. And I'm going to continue to do this as long as I can. I've almost run out of friends, but I seem to be making new ones daily. So we'll see how this all goes. Thank you once again, Aaron.
Welcome, Dad.
And this is me saying bye.
Thank you for watching Trad Jazz Today. Dan posts new interviews every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Make sure to check out the archive of past shows, and please give us a thumbs up when you subscribe to the channel. Bye.